Hello and welcome to our tutorial on numbers in PHP. In this video, we will cover everything you need to know about working with numbers in PHP. This includes basic number operations, typecasting, and some few tips and tricks for working efficiently when it comes to numbers in PHP. Alright, so first of all, let's try to cover the basics of operation you can perform with numbers in PHP. Okay, so let me just go ahead and create one file called numbers.php, and then I'll make sure that I'll open my PHP tag and I'll close it like that. Now with a block comment or a multi-line comment, let me outline the few operations that we can perform with numbers. So we can perform what we call the addition operation. We can also perform the subtraction operation. So this one right here is spelled wrongly. So we can also perform the multiplication operation. We can also perform what we call the division operation. And we can also perform the modulus operation. Yes. Now these operations can be performed using these corresponding operators. So for the addition we use the plus, for the subtraction we use the minus, and for the multiplication we use the asterisk like that. For the division we use the forward slash, and then for the modulus we use a percentage symbol to be able to perform the modulus operations. Now I'll go ahead and quickly declare some few variables so that we understand these various operators with regards to their various operations. Okay, all right, so I'll say num1 here and I'll set it to 10 for instance, and then I'll have another variable called num2 and then I'll set it to 20 and I'll terminate it. Now I want us to first perform the addition operation, so I'll just copy that and then make sure there's a comment here. So in order for us to get the sum of these two numbers, whenever you perform an addition operation, whatever value you are getting, we refer to that as the sum. Okay, so in order for us to get the sum, you say that sum, that is another variable, and then you will say num1 plus num2, and then we can echo this one to the browser and see what we are getting as the sum. Make sure this is saved. Go to file and then save that, and then let's refresh. Okay, make sure that you've changed your route to numbers.php. Good, so we are getting 30 as the output, and that is correct, right? Good. Okay, so that is the addition operation. Now let's try to do for the multiplication, no, the subtraction. Okay, let's try to do for the subtraction like that. So with the same numbers, let's say that we have, so whenever you subtract numbers, whatever you get as the output, we call it as what? The difference. So let's say difference, then we say that is equal to num1 minus num2, and then I'll terminate that. Let me echo this one as well to the browser and see what we have. Difference. Make sure it is terminated and save it as such. Okay, so let me go ahead and refresh the browser. So we are getting a -10 as the output, and that is correct, okay, and let's continue to look at the multiplication operator as well. So let me just comment this one up. So I'll say, So whenever you multiply two numbers, whatever the result is, we refer to that as the product. So let's say multiplication operation. Okay, let me just leave out there and then say that like that. So I'll say that product here should be equal to num1 and then asterisk. Remember we said asterisk is used for multiplication, right? So num2. Good. Then we terminate it. Then we output this one as well to the browser to see what we have. Then make sure that this one here is saved, and then let's go and check it out. Supposed to get like a 200, I guess. Yes, so we are getting a 200 as the output. So that is it about the multiplication as well. Now the next one is the division operation that we can perform when it comes to numbers in PHP. So let me go ahead and say that, okay, we have the division operation or the division. So I'll say that / that is the operator that is used whenever you want to perform a division operation in PHP, like that. Okay, so the result we are going to get whenever we do a division operation is what we refer to as the quotient. So let's say quotient is equal to num1 divided by num2. Then I'll say that let's echo out this one to the browser and see what we have. So quotient, make sure it is terminated and then make sure it is saved as such. Let's go back to the browser and refresh and see what we have. So we are getting a 0.5 as the output, and that is so correct. Okay, yeah, so that is it about the division operator or a division operation. Okay, again, let me comment out this one and then let's perform the modulus operation. So I'll say modulus. So what we use the percentage symbol to be able to perform the modulus operation. So I'll say modulus and then I'll say num1 and then percentage symbol and then num2, like that. So let's echo out the modulus and see what we have as the output. Okay, let me go ahead and refresh. So we are getting a 10 as the output. Yes, and that is correct. So 10 modulus, 20 is 10. So normally modulus are used for finding remainder of a particular expression. Okay, and one important use case of this modulus operation is when you want to find out in a particular program that a certain expression would evaluate maybe an even number or an odd number depending on the remainder that it gives you. So we had a 10 here, so that is obviously what, an even number. Yes, so that is one use case of the modulus operation when it comes to programming or PHP development. All right, now let's proceed and see what we can do again. So we are going to look at a concept called typecasting. Okay, we're going to look at a concept called typecasting. So let me get rid of all these ones here. Let me get rid of all these ones here and then say that we are looking at typecasting. Yeah, so it is another important aspect of working with numbers in PHP. Yes, it is one of the most important aspects that you need to know. Now what it does is that it allows you to clearly convert a value from one type or from one data type to another. So that is the explicit conversion of a value from one data type to another. So in the case of numbers, you can cast between integers and floating point numbers. So integers, for instance, a 10 is an integer and then 10.5 here is a floating point number. Okay, 10 here is what, an integer, and then 10.5 here is a floating point number. All right, so let's go ahead and have some few variables that we can work with. So first of all, I'll say I have a variable called int, and I'll set this one to 10 and make sure it is terminated. And I'll have another one called float, and this time around I would want to convert this thing here, this integer variable here, okay, to a float. So how do I do that? So I'll first of all have to say that equal to, then I'll open bracket and I'll pass in float as a keyword, and then I'll call my variable, which is what, the int variable that I declared at the top. All right, now let me go ahead and echo this one with a method called getType. Okay, getType, and then I'll say I'll pass in the float and then see what it gives us the output. Now this getType is just a method that comes out of the box with PHP like that. Okay, now let's save this one, go to the browser and see what we are having. So we are getting a double as the output. Yes, so it is what, a floating point number. Yes, all right, because we've converted the number from integer to float, it is telling us that okay, the number that we are currently having is what, a float, a double. Okay, all right, now to really understand what is happening, let me just comment this one out and then say that let's output integer and see what it gives us. So I refresh, so we are getting integer as the output. Is that okay? Yes. So on the next line where we converted this one to a float, when we outputted it to the browser, it was telling us that this now here is what, a double. You get it? Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and say that okay, we have a number that is of a float type. Let me comment this ones out, comment it out like that. So we're going to have a number that is of a float type, and then say we have 10.5 and terminate it. Now we want to convert into an integer, so we'll say int, then we say what, we open brackets and we pass in the keyword int, and then we say that we want to pick that float variable and convert it into an integer. So right now when we echo getType and then we pass in int, we are supposed to get integer as the output. So make sure that this one is saved. Go to file and then save it. I'll refresh and then we are getting integer as the output. Yes, we are getting integer as the output. Yes, so that is how do you call it, converting from a floating point number to an integer. Now let's try to actually output the number itself without a getType to see what it gives us. Okay, so I'll say int like that, and I'm expected that either this 0.5, yes, should be taken out. So let me refresh. Yes, the 0.5 is taken out like that. That the 0.5 is taken out. So that is how it works. That is how it works. This one here is truncated like that. Okay, so that is it about the various convention from the various data types that we have. So we have the integer data types, and then we have the floating point data type like that. So we can do the convention from both sides like that. Okay, let me go ahead and comment all these ones out, and then let's talk about one other thing. So in addition to the basic operations, PHP also gives us quite a number of functions for working with numbers. So some of the most commonly used number functions include the ABS. So let me just delete this ones and say that number functions. Okay, so we have what we call the ABS, or ABS like so, right? And it's used for finding up the absolute value of a number. It is used for finding what's the absolute value of a number. All right, so let me just say that for finding absolute value of a number. Absolute value. Okay, like that is okay. Now we also have what we call the cell. Okay, and this one is for rounding up to the nearest integer. So for rounding up to nearest integer, like that. All right, now we also have what we call the floor. What does it do? It's used for rounding down to the nearest integer, like that. And we also have one called round, and this is for rounding to the nearest integer or a specified number of decimal places. Okay, for rounding to the nearest integer or specified number of decimal places, number of decimal places, like that, full stop. Okay, so let's look at practicality aspect of these functions, like that. Okay, so I'll have a variable called number or num, and I'll set this one to -10. So I want us to first work with the ABS, which is the absolute. So let me just go ahead and say echo, and I'll say ABS, and this is a method. So you open bracket and then we pass in a number, and then we expect that whenever this one is outputted to the browser, we get a 10, because whenever you find the absolute of a value or a given number, if it is negative, it takes out the negative, like that. Okay, so let me go ahead and save this file here and go back and refresh the browser. So we are getting a 10. To make it more clear, let's say that this is supposed to be -15. Make sure it is saved. Go back and then refresh. Let's see what we have. We are getting a 15 as the answer. Okay, so that is it about the ABS. So whenever you have a negative number that you would want to send it to a positive number or find the absolute value of it, use the ABS function. Okay, now let's look at the cell. Okay, so let's say we have a number called, a variable called num, like that, and set it to 10.5. so when we echo cell and then we pass in num, what are we supposed to get as the output? It will round it up to what? To the nearest integer. It rounds it up, not down, up. So we are expecting that this one would be like 11. Yes, 11. So let's figure out if it is true. So we are getting 11 as the output. So that is it for the cell. Whenever you have a number and you want to round it up to the nearest integer, use the cell function. Okay, now let's go ahead and comment this one out as well, and let's say we want to work with the floor. Okay, let's work with the floor. So how does that work? So let's say we have a number to be 10.1, and then let's say that we want to echo floor, and then we pass in a number, like that. So we expect that it will round it down to the nearest integer. So we are expecting 10 as the output. Let's save this one here and then go ahead and refresh the browser, and we have to get 10 as the output, like that. Okay, good. So that is how the floor works. It rounds the number down to the nearest integer. So we can see we have 10.1 here. It rounds it down to 10, like that. Okay, let's comment this one out and say we want to work with the round, for instance. So we will say that we have a number code or a number with a value of 10.6 and then terminate it. Then let's echo round. Okay, now this takes two arguments. So it takes what? The number that we want to what? Round it. So first of all, we want to round num, and then we separate it by a comma, and then we say that the precision that we want to specify. Okay, how many precision do we want to round it up to? Okay, let's say we want to round it up to one decimal precision. Okay, and what we get, we are going to get the same output, I guess. So let's save this one and then refresh the browser. We are getting the same number. Okay, now let's try to increase this number a bit to like 565, and then make sure we save this one and see what we get as the output. Now let's change this one to 2. Okay, and save it and then refresh. We are getting a 10.66, and that is how the rounding works. So it tries to round the number to the nearest integer by a given decimal, by either specifying what the number of decimal places or the precision numbers that you want to have. Okay, all right, now let's finally talk about these things. You have to bear in mind that the data type of your numbers have different limitations and behavior. Okay, yes, you need to have that in mind, that the data type of your numbers, as we have the different data types, they have their limitations and have their their behavior as well. So you should use typecasting when necessary to ensure that your numbers are of the correct type for your use case. Okay, because of the variations in the limitations of the various data types, make sure that you use typecasting when necessary to ensure your numbers are of the correct type for whatever use case that you have. Yeah, so that is it for this particular session. I hope this video helped you a lot to understand some basic concepts when it comes to numbers in PHP, and you are eager to see the next content or the next video. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, give it a thumbs up. Okay, subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed to the channel yet, and I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, peace.